Fortis Coliseum, an endgame piece of content brought into the game on March 20th, 2024. It's been almost a year since this puppy made its way into the game, and I'm sure a good handful of you have completed it and earned yourself a nice Dishonest quiver. And over the course of all your attempts, I'm sure you've made yourselves familiar with all the invocation modifiers. That's their official name, but we all call them invocations, let's not kid ourselves. Out of all these invocations, there's a handful of choices that no sane person would ever pick outside of combat achievements, until recently that is. With the release of League's 5 Raging Echoes, an NPC within the Colosseum received an interesting tweak, a healing totem. Some of you have probably never seen this thing, and for good reasons. It's because you'll only see it if you select the Totemic invocation, the star of this video. Here's a block of text explaining what it does, but in short, when an enemy falls below 50% hit points, this little puppy will spawn and perpetually heal it. It's been seen as a troll to take it, as it would just eat your attacks and slow you down. Not to mention the click box on this thing is larger than the entire continent of Zaya, so it's frustrating to deal with for experienced and new players alike. With the release of Raging Echoes came Echo bosses, harder variants of already existing bosses in the game. One of them was Echo's Soul Heredit. During his Echo fight, multiple healing totems spawn across the arena. Now that seems obnoxious, but these totems could be hit without an attack speed delay, much like the red skulls in the Warden fight in Tombs of Amasket. However, this came with a side effect. An intended one, mind you. The totems that spawned within the Totemic invocation now had this property. Combine this with a Venator bow or Chin Champa, which hits multiple targets per attack, and you can see why this invocation has made its way out of the gutter. This video will be showcasing how effective the Totemic invocation can be, and how to get the most use out of it. It's nothing near a full guide to the Colosseum, but if you'd like to see one of those, give the video a like and comment below saying you'd like to see it, and maybe one will appear in your sub box if you're subscribed to the channel. Now the Colosseum is actually not too different from one of my favorite updates that has ever been added to the game, the Inferno. And the Inferno is not too different from my all-time favorite childhood update, Fight Caves. When this update dropped, I was actually already a teenager with a semi-developed brain, if you could believe that. While you guys were probably all gathered around the Varrock Square fountain playing RuneScape like it was Club Penguin, I was right there at the forefront, establishing meta and strategy on how to get that elusive and sought-after Fire Cape. After all was said and done, and I finally equipped my +4 strength bonus, guess where I went? That's right, straight to Varrock to show it off. I guess we're not so different after all. Nowadays in 2025, not only is it easy enough to get your own fire cape, but you can also display your achievement on your wall using Create or Craft It. They have all kinds of cool stuff, like this LED fire cape, a resin cast Jad, mouse pads, stickers, posters, plushies, and more. I actually have a Dragon Scimitar LED light in my room and I love it. It's super bright and adds so much personality and light to my room while I'm— Hey, get down from there! And right now, they're having a site-wide winter sale with 10% off absolutely everything in the store. Use my code COLD1 in all caps, and check them out because you deserve a sick and personalized space to game in as well. Let's jump right back in and show off all the cool stuff you can do with Totemic. Without further ado, let's get into some showcasing. For starters, let's talk about some basics on how to utilize the totems properly. The main factor to consider when deciding what weapon to use is the amount of NPCs in the vicinity. Attacks on a totem skip accuracy check, which make them prime targets for Chin Champas. The Venator bow, however, rolls accuracy on every target that it bounces to. The max hit of the extra hits from the Venator bow and the Black Chin Champa are identical. So if your Venator bow can find 3 targets, then that's your weapon of choice. From any rapid distance, you'll be able to fire 2 shots before having to switch targets. But with long range at maximum distance, you can fire 3 before having to switch targets, which can result in some crazy damage outputs. However, if there is no third target for the Venator bow to bounce off of, then Chins will be your best bet. There is one scenario where you'll execute your totem differently, but we'll get into that in the later waves when it becomes relevant. Now, Totemic cannot be selected on wave 1, but it can be randomly generated from wave 2 and onward. So let's look at some example setups starting with wave 2. Waves 1 through 4, I like to start just southeast of the northwest pillar. My objective is to attack the melee Fremennik as soon as possible, then make my way over to the small major to set up my Venator. I want to be positioned to the west of the small major, so both its and the mage Fremennik's totems spawn to the south of me. If all works out, we can chain 4 Chins in quick succession and absolutely obliterate the stack, leaving us with just the ranger to deal with. If your Fremennik ranger found a way to survive the carnage, you can either Venator bow him with the large ranger as your primary target, or just scythe him while he's stacked on top. Either works fine, but I recommend the scythe option if he's above half HP. Since distance is a factor when loading up extra hits, we like to be to the north or east of the large ranger before firing up the totem. That's because just 2 steps back from him will give us enough distance to load 3 Chins before jumping back on. If done correctly, we'll have a consistent wave 2 skip and avoid the Jaguar spawn entirely. However, if your hits don't line up and you do get that Jaguar spawn, here's a nifty way to use the totem to clear him out, just a bit faster. Wave 3 operates in the same way as Wave 2. However, we're going to have a Jaguar to deal with unless you get extremely lucky. The Rangers can be dealt with in the same way as on Wave 2, but once the Jaguar's out, out, it's time for the Venator bow to really shine. Being far enough away will allow us to use the Venator bow on long range to load up 3 hits at max speed before switching back to the mobs. If executed correctly, you'll be able to dish out some insane damage. Wave 4 consists of the first Manticore and a Shaman. This is the setup I found most consistent for skipping the Wave 4 Jaguar. Clear out the Berserker immediately and start running towards the west side of the Manticore. Clear out the Archer with whatever one-handed weapon you have, then scythe the Manticore once, and pull off the 8-way switch into your Venator bow. Step under the Manticore to line up his attacks with the Shaman if needed. Your first Venator shot will put the Fremennik Mage at that 50% mark and bring out the first totem. Simply throw 2 chins and T-bow the Manticore straight after. If the numbers line up, this will bring out the Manticore's totem right after for you to repeat the process. From here on out, it's a DPS race to clear the wave, but be sure to kill the Shaman last, as its death animation is much shorter. I prefer to save up Bone Claw specs to make this process as consistent as possible. Waves 5 and onward, I'll be starting at everyone's favorite spot, and Waves 5 and 6 specifically are some of the more interesting ones, as the reinforcements will consist of a Shaman and a Jaguar, 2 small NPCs which are prime targets for the Venator bow. Distributions of NPCs will be varied from here on out, so let's go over some broad tips that can cover you in most situations. Number 1. Totems will try to spawn on the tile southwest of an NPC, and if it's blocked, it will instead spawn northeast. We want our totems to be in that southwest position so we can benefit from throwing chin chompas at them. So avoid putting yourself in positions where NPCs will have this tile blocked, such as going to the north side of a west pillar. Number 2, we'll be using the northwest pillar for this example, as it's the pillar I use for my runs. This one's mainly for waves 5 and 6, but just before reinforcements are about to spawn, make sure you're on the south side of the pillar to bring the first NPC down a tile. This will cause the reinforcements to get caught on its north side, and be properly positioned for all your Venator bow totem shenanigans. Number 3, in max gear, the secondary bounces of the Venator bow and black chin chompas can deal a maximum of 26 damage, while one-way switching with no prayers and being range potted will max an 18. Considering a scythe maximum DPS output is 88 damage per 5 ticks, this puts the one-way chin above that with a max output of 90 per 5 ticks, with no accuracy check, mind you, so don't feel guilty one-waying a chin if you're unprepared for a totem spawn. Wave 7 and onward will see primarily chin use, as all the mobs will be 3x3, aside from the Shaman reinforcement on waves 10 and 11. We also get the introduction of the Shockwave Colossus, or the Big Major as everyone calls him. Since its health pool is very low, more often than not, you won't need to attack its totem at all, unless you're getting Venator bow benefits off of it. There's a window for 2 scythe swings after its totem spawns, so if you're confident it will die in that time, you're best off ignoring its totem. Compared to the first 6 waves, the gameplay here will be very robust, but these are the waves where you can look to pull off some different moves on one particular totem, and that's in cases like this, where our first NPC is on red bar levels of hit points. We're better off tossing one chin, scything a single time, and then scything the second NPC in line off the second NPC's totem. This still gives us our extra damage on the second NPC, while clearing out the first NPC that would have demanded another attack to kill. Depending on spawn RNG, the Serpent could get to you first, or the Minotaur. While the Venator bow is our best friend for DPS here, we're going to want to make sure we're positioned properly for the addition of the Totemic Invocation. In cases where the Shaman gets to you first, you'll be attacking the Minotaur from this position. However, more often than not, this will cause both the Minotaur and the Shaman's totem to spawn simultaneously, which you'd think would be great, except when you try to clear them out with the Venator bow, they hog all of the bounces. Because of this, we want to make sure the totem for the Serpent comes out first, so we can get our 2 free shots. The totem that spawns from the Minotaur underneath us actually can't see the Minotaur at all due to how NPC line of sight works, so we can wait to clear it out after the Serpent is history. Next is the Minotaur first setup. As you can see, we get a nice triple shot, and our third hit makes its way onto one of the wave spawned in NPCs. The Minotaur's totem appears in a nice place, and the Shaman's totem we can't realistically hit, but it's not the end of the world, as the third bounce will snipe it. The problem is with that third NPC I mentioned. We don't want him getting down to half HP and spawning a totem that we might not have a chance of hitting off without putting ourselves in mortal danger. Not to mention it would spawn northeast anyway. For this one, just keep watch of its health, and if it's getting close to half, just scythe the Minotaur. And for the soul fight, it's as simple as throwing 2 chins when the totem comes out. He's set on spawning in some molten sand or whatever when it's half HP anyway, so you won't have to worry about tanking a spear attack to deal with it in a timely manner. And that's about it for the totem showcase. Hopefully you've learned something from this, and it helps you push for a new personal best in the future. This has been a cold one, and I'll see you next time. And once again, a big thank you to Creator Crafted for sponsoring this video. Don't forget about their big winter sale, and my code COLD1, all caps, for 10% off any resin cast models, mouse pads, LED lights, and much, much more.